friends, it's Deanna here today, and today we're going to be working on the Kayla flutter top. This top is super cute. It's got the cutest ruffles on the shoulders and on the bottom of the shirt. It is super simple, so I'm super excited to sew it up. So let's go ahead and get to it. The first thing we're going to do is going to grab our bodice and we're going to attach those shoulder seams together. So we're facing them right sides together and we're going to match up at the shoulder seam and sew. And after I do that, I'm going to go ahead and prep my sleeve shoulder ruffles so that way they're ready for when I'm going to sew them on. What I'm going to do is, first off, I like to find the middle top of it so I know exactly where the half of my ruffle is, so when I go to attach it I know exactly where that is, and I do that by, where are my scissors, marking just a little trim right there where the half is, so that way when I go to attach them to my shoulder I know where to match up that shoulder seam to. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in a gathering stitch at the top of the ruffle, so where it is kind of curved, that's where I'm going to put in a gathering stitch. I'm just doing a basting stitch, a long basting stitch on my sewing machine, and then I'm going to pull on the bobbin to gather it. Also, if you are going to hem your ruffle, this is when you're going to go ahead and hem it before you gather it. It might be easier to do that. You can do a rolled hem on your serger. You can do a half an inch fold hem, sewing with any kind of stitch, because it is gathered. It doesn't have to be stretched out, so you can even do it with just a straight stitch on your sewing machine. Because we're using knit, you can just leave it raw. It is up to you, whatever you want to do about the hem on that. So let me go ahead and prep all these. We're gonna go over and sew those shoulders. If you're hemming, you're gonna go ahead and hem your ruffle, and then we're going to gather. I'm not gonna hem. I like the look of the raw edges, so I'm just gonna leave it raw, but I'm going to go ahead and gather. When you start your gathers, you want to make sure that you have a long tail at the beginning. I'm doing a stretch stitch, so like a number 4 on my sewing machine, and I'm going to go about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. I like to hold my thread at the top, kind of give it a little bit of pressure, and it helps me gather, or just up your tension a little bit, and sometimes that helps me go ahead and gather a little bit as I'm going. At the end, I also want to leave a long tail to help me gather. Ruffles are ruffled, so I'm going to open up my arm side. Right here is my neck, this is my arm, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab first my short ruffle. Make sure this is my short ruffle. Yeah, this is my short ruffle, and I'm going to place it, find that mark that we made earlier where the half is, and I'm going to place it right sides together to my arm size, so the raw edge is touching, and I'm going to place it all the way along, leaving a 1 inch gap at the end of the arm size. So that's going to be right on there, and leave that 1 inch gap. If your ruffle didn't gather by your machine, you can go ahead and pull on it and make it gather a little bit. Then I'm going to grab my big ruffle. Actually, that was my big ruffle. I'm going to grab my small ruffle first. This is the short one. Yeah. Short ruffle first. And put that on. If it didn't gather yet, you can go ahead and pull on the bobbin thread, and that will help you gather it. Like I said, I just kind of hold on to the tension, so like the thread that's feeding through the top of my sewing machine, and I kind of hold it as it's feeding through the needle. It might not be the best thing for my sewing machine. I don't know. I haven't had any issues with it. And then it kind of, depending on the fabric, so it's like this nice waffle fabric, it gathers it super nicely, and leaving that big tail at the end of thread. That way when I have to loosen it a little bit or whatever, it doesn't come off. All right, so there's my first ruffle. My short ruffle is touching right sides with the top. Then I'm gonna grab my longer ruffle and put it right on top of it. So right sides with the top as well. So the wrong side of my short ruffle is touching the right side of my long ruffle, my top ruffle. And I'm gonna match them up. Now if you want to, you can go ahead and baste these ruffles, two ruffles together first, so that way when you go to sew them on, they don't move. It is up to you. I kind of just go for it. Make sure I clip a lot, and when I'm sewing I make sure I watch out that it's not folding in or anything like that when I'm sewing it on. But if you are a little bit worried that your ruffle is going to move on you, then I would definitely go over to my sewing machine and use like the same stitch that you used for gathering, use that stitch for basting these two together first, and then sew them. A lot of times I like that edge to kind of fold up, so this is the edge where it finishes it, so it kind of I make it go over the edge, that way it gets sewn in like that, and right here on this side as well, so it gets sewn in. And remember to leave that inch gap here at the other edge. And we're gonna go ahead, and after I put them on right, I'm gonna sew them on. I'm gonna use my serger, but you can either use a serger or a zigzag stitch or whatever you want on your sewing machine. So let me do it for the other side as well, and we'll go sew. Alrighty, now that my ruffle is on, you can go ahead and pull those basting stitches off. And then what we're gonna do is I'm going to steam it open and then go over to my cover stitch, or you can do a stretch stitch on your sewing machine. We're gonna fold that inch, that extra inch right here, fold it down, and then top stitch right here the edge, that raw edge, not raw, but where the ruffles are. Top stitch that down. Okay, and we're gonna do that for both sides. We're just gonna do a top stitch right along here on the edge. Once that's top stitch, we're going to fold it right sides together, and we're going to sew those side seams together. So pin and sew, side seam and side seam. To prep our ruffles, I've got my wide ruffle and my narrow ruffle, and we're gonna grab that raw edge and sew those right sides together. Make sure that they're not twisted, so make sure they go around in a loop. I'm gonna sew those raw edges, and then we can go ahead, and if you are hemming your ruffle, you're gonna hem it just like you hemmed your flutters for your sleeves. So if you want to go ahead and do that, you can go ahead and hem that. Again, I'm not going to hem it, so I'm going to sew there, and then I'm going to go ahead and put in a gathering stitch, so a basting stitch all the way at the top of the ruffle, just like I did with my flutters. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, before I start to gather, I'm going to go ahead and just mark that half point right there for the front, and then match up the front and that seam in the back, and go to the sides and mark my sides as well, because I feel like that will help me with, once it's gathered, that will help me be able to tell like how wide I need to gather them or whatever for when I'm attaching. I always like to go ahead and quarter for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and now gather just the same way that I did my flutter. Alright, right, in my bottom of my shirt, I'm going to go ahead and match up those two side seams and go to one side and then the other. And those are gonna be my quarter points where I'm gonna match up my ruffles. That way I know exactly where they're supposed to be. I'm gonna grab my long ruffle first, and I'm going to make it the width of my top. So when I was holding the tension, I was holding it pretty tight because I like to be able to gather most of it like that. So now I just need to even them out, the gathers, so they're even. Okay, don't want to take out too much of it, so make sure that you tie them together. Tie that basting stitch together so that it doesn't come apart. So it came apart right here because I didn't tie it first. I should have tied it first. So I might have to go back and gather this little section right here, because if not, then I'll have like a straight section there. So let me go ahead and gather that real quick. All right, so then you can go ahead and tie them so that they don't come apart, and there it is. It's pretty even. I like to have, so the higher rise is my front, so I like to have my seam be on the back. So there's my seam, and I am going to place this ruffle right sides together on my top, so I can turn my top right side out, so that way I can do it the other way. It might be easier. And this is my back seam, so I'm gonna grab my short ruffle. Yeah, I did the same thing with my flutter. I wanted to go with the long flutter first. We got to do the short first so you can see it. If we attach the long first, then we won't see it. And I made the same mistake on this one. I pulled, oh no, I didn't. Here it is. So you want to make sure that you tie it together first. Oh yes, I did. That way it doesn't come unraveled too much. If you left a long enough tail, it won't. But I didn't leave a long enough tail, so I've got that gap right there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go gather that gap again. You would think the second time I would try a little bit harder, but you know. All right, so now that it is the width, make sure your ruffles are gathered evenly, and we're gonna turn them, and I'm gonna match up that seam, where's that seam, to my back quarter point so that my seam is on the back. Raw edges together. Then I'm gonna find my quarter point that I marked. Remember, I went and clipped it right before I gathered it and put it right there. And then my other quarter point, remember to make them right sides together, don't let them flip. All right, and then you can go ahead and even those gathers out all the way around. And if you want to, you can go ahead and baste it on. I'm gonna tie these right here, that way it doesn't come unraveled again like it did earlier. You can baste those on first before you put the other ruffle on, or you know, like I did my other side. Remember, I just kind of went for it. It's up to you. And then after they are evened out, we're gonna grab our longer ruffle and we're gonna place it right on top, the right side of the ruffle touching the wrong side of the back, the short ruffle. So both ruffles, the right sides of both ruffles are touching the right side of the, I'm trying to find my quarter point. Both are touching the right side of the top. Okay. So let me match those up, and then we're gonna go over to our sewing machine or serger and sew those on just like we did our arm ruffles. All right, our ruffles are done. So now we can go ahead and steam them. We'll take that basting stitch off, steam them down, and top stitch along that raw edge. Not raw. Why do I keep saying raw edge? Along that ruffled edge. So top stitch just like we did our ruffles on our shoulders. And it's turning out super, super cute. I am loving all these ruffles. Now we just need to do our neckband. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, the ruffle. Then we're gonna do our neckband. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab, see where these tails are on our shoulders, on our armpit seam. I'm gonna fold that right over itself, and you can either use a needle and tuck it in, or you can zigzag stitch it on, or however you want to get rid of that tail. There is actually a video on our page on what to do with that. So anyway, now for our neckband. For prepping our neckband, I'm gonna grab my neckband, I'm gonna fold it wrong sides together, and I'm going to give it a steam so that way I have a memory crease on my band. And then I'm going to fold those raw edges right sides together, and I'm going to sew that raw edge right there. All right, so now that our neckband has been sewn together, we're gonna grab it and fold it right sides together. I mean, wrong sides together, not right sides. You're like, that doesn't look like the right side. And we're gonna go out to the front, and I'm gonna mark it. I'm quartering my neckband. Then I'm gonna match up the front and the back and go to the sides. Oh, in case you're wondering, I am wearing a cuddle up tunic. This is the lantern sleeves on it. And then our bishop sleeves. Lantern, bishops, I can't remember what they're called, but that's the bigger sleeve, and with the neckband option. And this fabric, it came from Olga's Closet. I know I get questions about what I'm wearing, and then sometimes I forget to mention it, so I figure I'd mention it right now. And I'm gonna go ahead and match up those shoulders and go to the front, and then match up the shoulders again and go to the back. And then I'm gonna match up the front and the back and go to the sides. Whoop. And then I'm gonna go ahead and grab my neckband, and I'm going to match up all those seams. And then I'm gonna go over to my serger and sew it on. I like to start in the back and get that back seam in there. Put the needle down. Grab the next quarter seam, quarter point, and then stretch the band so it fits and the raw edges are together, and then go to the next quarter point and do the same thing, and then continue that same way all the way around. All right, y'all, we're done with our cute little top. I love it. I think it looks gorgeous. I love the little gather ruffles. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know if you have any questions about anything that I did. Comment, like, share, subscribe if you haven't. Come find us on Facebook and Instagram so you can see what everybody else is making, and you can show off what you're making because we want to see it and be inspired by it. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!